I want to tell you about a man named Marcus, and I want you to really listen to this one, because this is not just a story about a DNA test. This is a story about a man who did everything right, got betrayed by someone he trusted, and still had to sit in my courtroom 4 years later to find out the truth that should have been told to him from day one. My name is Patricia Monroe. I was a family court judge for 23 years in Georgia. I retired 2 years ago. And now, finally, I can sit down and tell you the cases that stayed with me. The ones I carried home every night. The ones I still think about when I wake up at 2 in the morning and can't fall back asleep. This is one of those cases. Marcus was 31 years old when he walked into my courtroom. He was a construction foreman. Big guy. Quiet. The kind of man who was raised to believe that you handle your responsibilities without making a big noise about it. He came in that morning with his mother, Diane, sitting right beside him. She had her best clothes on. Pressed, neat, dignified. I noticed that. It told me how much this day meant to their family. On the other side of the room sat a young woman named Renee, 28 years old. Nursing student. She came in with her older sister. She sat down and never once looked in Marcus's direction. Not when she walked in, not when she took her seat. I noticed that too. Now before I tell you what happened inside that courtroom, I need to take you back about 5 years. Because the story that really matters did not begin the day they came to see me. It began in a small apartment in Atlanta, on the night that Renee found out she was pregnant, and had to decide what she was going to do about it. At that time Renee was with Marcus. They had been dating a few months. Marcus was completely devoted to her. He thought they had something real. But there was another man in the picture. His name was Devin. Devin had been in Renee's life for 3 years before she ever met Marcus. It was one of those on and off situations that never fully ends. Devin was charming and exciting but not the kind of man you could count on. When Renee met Marcus, she and Devin were in one of their off phases. But about 2 months into her relationship with Marcus, she and Devin spent one more night together. One night she convinced herself didn't count. One night she pushed to the back of her mind. And 6 weeks after that night, she found out she was pregnant. Now I have sat across from hundreds of women in situations like this over my 23 years on that bench. And I always try to be fair. I always try to understand. So let me be fair to Renee here and say this. In those very early weeks, she may genuinely not have known for certain whose baby it was. That part one can understand. What I cannot excuse is what she did next. She went to Marcus and told him he was the father. No uncertainty. No hesitation. She looked that man in the eye and told him he was the father of her baby. And then she picked up the phone and blocked Devin's number. She cut off all contact with Devin completely. She let Marcus believe with absolutely no shadow of doubt that that child was his. She made a choice. A cold, calculated choice. And Marcus, being the man he was, never questioned it for a single second. He just showed up. He went to every doctor's appointment he could make around his work schedule. He was in that delivery room the night Jordan was born. He held that baby boy the second the nurses placed him in his arms. He looked down at that child and he thought, this is my son. This is my responsibility. He put his name on the birth certificate. He set up a savings account for college when Jordan turned 2. And every single month, without being chased, without being reminded, he paid his child support. For the first year or so after Jordan was born, Marcus and Renee tried to make the relationship work. But it slowly fell apart the way a lot of young relationships do. Not with a big explosion, just a slow, quiet ending. By the time Jordan was about 14 months old, they had gone their separate ways. Even after the breakup, Marcus kept showing up. He took Jordan on weekends. He called to check in. He was doing everything a father is supposed to do. Meanwhile, Renee started bringing Devin back into her life. Devin had spent all those months wondering why she had disappeared on him so suddenly. She let him back in. Not as a romantic partner, she would later claim, but she started letting Devin spend time with Jordan. She posted pictures on social media of Devin holding the little boy. She wrote captions like, "Some bonds don't need a last name." Marcus found out about those posts the way people find out about everything these days. His cousin sent him a screenshot. Marcus stared at that photograph for a long time. He said the way Devin held Jordan didn't look like a family friend holding a child. It looked like something else. Something more. So Marcus confronted Renee. And here is the part one think about most when I remember this case. She didn't deny it. She didn't get angry and call him crazy. She didn't say, "You're imagining things." She just went quiet. And let me tell you something I learned in 23 years on the bench: silence is almost always louder than a lie. Marcus hired a lawyer and filed a petition for a DNA test. And that is what brought them both to my courtroom on that Tuesday morning. When I came in and looked at those two people sitting on opposite sides of the room, I could already feel the weight of everything that hadn't been said yet. I let Marcus speak first. He was calm. He laid out the whole timeline simply and clearly. He talked about Devin, about the photograph, about Renee going quiet. He talked about 4 years of child support, never late, never short. He talked about how in the last year Renee had moved to a new apartment and never told him the address, and he'd had to go back through the courts just to find out where his own son was living. Then it was Renee's turn, and I asked her one simple question. I looked at her and I said, "Renee, when you first found out you were pregnant, before you said a single word to Marcus, who did you call first?" She glanced at her sister. Her sister looked down at the floor. Then Renee said quietly, "I called my sister." I said, "And what did you tell your sister?" There was a long pause. And then she said, "I told her I wasn't sure who the father was." The room shifted. I can't describe it any other way. It just shifted, like something had been holding its breath and finally let go. Marcus did not move. He went completely still. His hands were flat on the table. He stared straight ahead. I kept my eyes on Renee. I said, "So you told your sister you weren't sure. But then you walked up to Marcus and told him with full confidence that he was the father." "No, maybe. No, possibly. You told him he was the father. Is that correct?" She said yes. "And Devin, you told him nothing?" "No." "Why not?" She started crying. And through her tears she said, "Because I wanted it to be Marcus. Devin wasn't ready. Devin was unreliable. Marcus was good. Marcus was stable. I thought I was making the best choice for my baby. I thought if I just committed to Marcus and built a life with him, everything would work out." I let that sit in the room for a moment. Then I said something I only say when I truly believe it needs to be said. I told her, "Renee, you did not make that choice for your baby. You made that choice for yourself. You chose the more convenient option, the safer option, the option that gave you the most stable life. And you made Marcus pay for that choice every single month for 4 years without ever telling him the truth. That man deserved to know." She was sobbing. The sister had her head down. And Marcus was still sitting there completely still, like a man who had been bracing for an impact for so long that when it finally came, his body just went numb. I called for the envelope. I opened it. I looked at the results. And I read them out loud in that courtroom. "Marcus, you are not this child's biological father." His mother Diane made a sound I will never forget. A deep broken sound that only a mother who has just watched her child be destroyed can make. She reached out and grabbed her son's arm and he let her hold it. Marcus himself put both hands over his face and just sat there. Not crying loudly. Just sitting with it. 4 years. 4 years of his life. Renee was on the other side of the room completely falling apart. And I believe her pain was real. I do. Because I think that was the moment when the full weight of what she had done, what she had been living with and carrying and bearing for 4 years, finally came crashing down on her all at once. But pain at consequences is not the same as accountability. And in my courtroom we deal in accountability. After the results I addressed them both directly. I told Marcus that the love and effort he had put into that little boy was not wasted. It was not nothing. Jordan had spent 4 years of his life knowing that a man chose to show up for him every single day. That is real. That matters. Biology tells you who made a child. It does not tell you the value of a man who chose to be a father. And then I turned to Renee and I told her plainly what was coming. In the state of Georgia, when a woman knowingly or recklessly misrepresents the paternity of a child, and allows a man to pay child support under false pretenses, that is considered paternity fraud. And paternity fraud carries serious legal consequences. I told Renee right there in that courtroom that she needed to get a lawyer before she left that building. Because what was about to follow her out of my courtroom was going to be significant. In the weeks after the hearing, Marcus's attorney filed a civil claim against Renee for paternity fraud and wrongful collection of child support. The total amount Marcus had paid over 4 years came to just over $19,000. The civil court ruled in Marcus's favor. Renee was ordered to repay every single dollar. Because she had worked part-time and had limited savings, the court set up a structured repayment plan, but the order was clear. That money had to come back. On top of that, the court issued a formal judgment against Renee for the legal fees Marcus had accumulated in pursuing the case. That was an additional $4,000 she owed him. My name is Patricia Monroe. I was a family court judge for 23 years. I'm retired now. And this was one of the stories I carried off that bench with me. I have more. I'll see you in the next one.